The email sat in my inbox, ominous and unsettling, like a dark cloud marring an otherwise sunny day. The anonymous sender warned me about my new husband, Marcus, that he wasn't who he claimed to be and that I should be cautious during our secluded lake house honeymoon. My heart raced as I read the message again, the words blurring together. Marcus and I had met 6 months ago through a mutual friend, and our whirlwind romance led to an impromptu wedding just last month. He was a successful real estate agent, charming and caring, and I was utterly smitten. But this email planted seeds of doubt, its implications too disturbing to ignore. I glanced at Marcus across the room, his features softened by the golden afternoon light streaming through the window. He caught my eye and flashed that warm, disarming smile that had captured my heart from the start. "Everything okay, babe?" he asked, his brow furrowing with concern. I forced a reassuring smile, tucking the email away for now. "Of course, just finalizing some last-minute details for our trip." As we packed our bags and headed for the lake house, the email's warning lingered like a specter, casting a shadow over what should have been the happiest time of our lives. But I pushed the doubts aside, determined not to let some anonymous coward ruin our honeymoon. Little did I know, the tranquil waters of the lake concealed dark currents that would soon sweep me into a whirlpool of deception and danger, testing the bounds of trust and revealing the depths one would sink to for love or revenge. The lake house seemed less idyllic than advertised. Secluded, yes, but also rustic and a bit rundown. As we unpacked our bags, an uneasy feeling settled in my gut. "Cozy little place, huh?" Marcus remarked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I forced a smile, not wanting to dampen his enthusiasm. "It's charming." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the sense that something was off. Marcus's stories about his past didn't quite add up, little inconsistencies emerging like cracks in a carefully constructed facade. One night, as we sat by the fire, I decided to probe gently. "You mentioned your parents were both teachers, but didn't you say your dad was a banker?" He tensed, his expression guarded. I must have misspoke. My dad was a high school history teacher. The excuse felt hollow, and my suspicions deepened. I needed answers, so I reached out to my best friend Lila, who worked for a private investigation firm. "Can you do some digging on Marcus for me?" I asked over the phone, keeping my voice low. "There are just a few things that don't add up." "Say no more," Lila replied, her tone grave. "I'm on it." As the days passed, Marcus grew increasingly distant, our conversations stilted and awkward. The once warm lake house now felt like a prison, its walls closing in on our fraying relationship. Then one night, I heard faint footsteps outside our bedroom door, followed by a muffled thud. My heart pounded as I crept to the door and peered out, but the hallway was empty, the darkness impenetrable. Marcus stirred beside me, his brow furrowed. "Everything okay?" I swallowed hard, forcing a nod. "Just thought I heard something." "Great." His eyes narrowed, studying me intently. "You've seemed on edge lately. Talk to me." But how could I share my doubts when the truth felt like a precarious house of cards, teetering and ready to collapse at the slightest disturbance? All I could do was wait for Lila's call, praying it would shed light on the shadows engulfing our honeymoon and our marriage. My phone rang and I hurried outside to take the call, not wanting Marcus to overhear. "Lila, what did you find?" Her voice was grave. "Irina, you're not going to like this. Marcus Renault isn't his real name. His birth name is Mark Reynolds." My heart sank. "What else?" "He was previously engaged to a woman named Emily Parker, but she went missing about a year ago, right before their wedding. The case is still open, and the police suspect foul play." I pressed a hand to my mouth, nauseous. "Oh my God." "There's more," Lila continued. "I did some digging into his financials. He's been laundering money through shell companies, and there are a few suspicious wire transfers to offshore accounts." My mind raced, struggling to process this new information about the man I thought I knew. "Thanks for looking into this, Lila. I need some time to figure out what to do." After hanging up, I retreated to the bedroom, my hands trembling. Marcus emerged from the bathroom, a towel draped around his waist. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said with a half-smile. "Everything okay?" I studied his face, searching for any hint of the truth. "Who is Emily Parker?" His expression darkened, the color draining from his face. "Where did you hear that name?" "Don't play dumb with me. I snapped, anger rising to mask my fear. "I know all about your past fiancé who went missing, and your real identity." He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "You've been poking around where you don't belong." The accusation hung heavy in the air, charged with an unspoken threat. In that moment, I realized I was trapped in this remote lake house with a man capable of unimaginable deceit and perhaps even violence. As I backed away, my heel caught on the rug, and I stumbled. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing my arm in a vice-like grip. "Let me go," I cried, struggling against his iron grasp. His face was twisted with rage, a terrifying mask of the man I thought I knew. "You should have left well enough alone." Marcus's grip tightened painfully, his eyes burning with contempt. "You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you?" I wrenched my arm free, stumbling backward. "What did you do to Emily?" His jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might strike me. But then his expression shifted, a sly smile curling his lips. "Emily was a means to an end, just like you." A chill ran down my spine. "What are you talking about?" He laughed, a low, menacing sound. "Did you really think a guy like me could fall for someone like you?" It was all part of the plan. My stomach churned as the pieces fell into place. The anonymous email, his evasiveness, the money laundering. It all made sense now. He'd been playing me from the start. "You're a monster," I spat, backing toward the door. His smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Irina." I reached for the doorknob, but he blocked my path, towering over me. "Get out of my way." "Not a chance." He grabbed my wrist, his grip like steel. "You know too much." Fear clawed at my throat as I struggled against him, kicking and scratching. But he was too strong. We grappled, slamming into the wall, and a framed photo crashed to the floor, shattering glass everywhere. In that moment, a flicker of hesitation crossed his face, and I seized the opportunity, wrenching free and bolting for the door. I flung it open and raced outside, my bare feet pounding against the weathered dock. But the dock was slick from the morning's rain, and as I reached the end, I lost my footing, tumbling forward with a scream. I hit the water hard, the icy shock stealing my breath. And then, just as quickly, something heavy slammed into me from behind, forcing me under the murky surface. I thrashed and kicked, my lungs burning, until finally my head broke through again. Marcus loomed over me in the shallows, his face twisted with rage. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you?" he snarled, shoving me back under. I clawed at his arms, desperate for air, my vision growing spotty. Was this how it would end, betrayed and drowned by the man I loved? Then, just as the darkness closed in, a sickening crack echoed through the water, and Marcus's weight lifted off me. I surfaced, gasping and sputtering, to find him floating face down, a dark stain blooming in the lake around his head. My heart pounded in my ears as I stared at his lifeless form, my mind reeling. What had I done? I don't know how long I treaded water, staring at Marcus's still form, my mind numb. Had I killed him? Self-defense or not? The reality of what happened was sinking in like a lead weight. Finally, I mustered the strength to swim to the dock and haul myself out of the icy water. My teeth chattered as I fumbled for my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. "I need help," I stammered when the operator answered. "My husband, we got into a fight and he fell. I think he's hurt bad." Within minutes, the tranquil lake was swarming with police and paramedics. As they pulled Marcus's limp body from the water, I wrapped myself in a blanket, trying to quell my shivering. A stern-faced detective approached me. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Choi. Can you tell me what happened here?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Marcus and I were arguing, and he tried to stop me from leaving. We struggled, and he fell and hit his head. The words tumbled out in a rush, the adrenaline still coursing through me. But I think he was trying to drown me first. Detective Choi's eyes narrowed. "We'll get to the bottom of this. In the meantime, we need to get you looked at." She signaled a paramedic over. As they ushered me toward the ambulance, something caught my eye, a flash of color beneath the murky surface. I stopped in my tracks, squinting. "Wait," I murmured, pulling free. Before anyone could stop me, I waded back into the shallows and plunged my arms into the frigid depths, grasping at the object. When I resurfaced, clutching a rusted car door, the detective and her team watched me with a mixture of bewilderment and suspicion. "There's a whole car down there," I gasped, my breath ragged. And look. I held up the faded door, revealing a tattered Pennsylvania license plate, and a woman's leather purse tangled amid the debris, the contents strewn about. Detective Choi's eyes went wide as she reached for the purse, pulling out a cracked compact mirror with the initials EP etched into the surface. "Emily Parker," she breathed, realization dawning across her features. As the police began hauling up piece after piece of the sunken wreckage, the full, horrifying truth materialized before our eyes. Marcus's past hadn't just caught up with him, it had quite literally resurfaced. And though he may have slipped through the law's grasp once before, this time the depth of his sins would finally be laid bare. The search for Marcus's body dragged on for days, the murky lake waters refusing to surrender their grim secrets. But as the investigation deepened, a far more sinister truth began to emerge. Detective Choi paid me a visit, her expression grave. "We've uncovered some disturbing details about your husband's past, Miss Calloway." I steeled myself, clutching the blanket tighter. "What did you find?" Mark Reynolds, or Marcus Renault as he called himself, had a lengthy criminal record, fraud, identity theft, you name it. He was a con man through and through. My heart sank as she laid out the sordid details. The money laundering, the fake identities, the mysterious disappearance of his former fiancée, Emily Parker. "We believe he was planning to do the same to you," Choi said quietly. "Marry you, drain your accounts, then vanish without a trace, just like he did with Emily." Bile rose in my throat as the full weight of Marcus's betrayal hit me. He'd played me for a fool, spinning an elaborate web of lies, and Emily, had she suffered the same brutal fate, trapped and drowned by the man she loved? Days later, they finally recovered Marcus's body from the depths of the lake, a ghastly sight. But as broken and bloated as his corpse was, the evil glint in his dead eyes chilled me to the bone. The media descended on the case like vultures, dubbing it the Lake House homicide and breathlessly speculating about my role. But through it all, one question loomed largest. What really happened that night on the dock? Then, just when I thought the nightmare couldn't get any worse, Detective Choi called with earth-shattering news. "We've got Marcus in custody. He's alive." My heart stopped as she explained how he'd staged his death, holding his breath underwater to fool us all. In that moment, the delicate threads of my sanity began to fray. Hours later, I found myself staring at him through the reinforced glass of an interrogation room, his face battered but alive. As our eyes met, a cruel smile twisted his lips. "Hello, Irina," he purred, spreading his hands in a mocking shrug. Surprise. The venom in his voice made my skin crawl. But this time I was the one holding all the cards. This time I would be the one to unravel the truth and make him pay for his sins. "Start talking," I said coldly. "I want to know everything." The courtroom was packed, a palpable tension hanging in the air as Marcus, or Mark Reynolds as his true identity had been revealed, was led in, his wrists shackled. He flashed me a cold smile as he took his seat, utterly remorseless. As the trial progressed, each witness's testimony painted a clearer picture of the depth of his depravity. The meticulous planning, the staged drowning, his calculated efforts to drain my accounts and vanish without a trace. It was all laid bare. Detective Choi took the stand, recounting how they'd found Emily Parker's bracelet in the submerged car, finally giving her family closure after her mysterious disappearance 2 years prior. Through it all, Marcus remained unnervingly calm, even cavalier at times, but I could see the cracks in his facade, the flickers of rage simmering just beneath the surface. When it was my turn to testify, I steeled myself, forcing down the fear that still gripped me whenever I looked into those cold, empty eyes. "He admitted his real plan to me that night," I said, my voice steady. "He wanted to marry me, bleed me dry, and disappear, just like he did with Emily Parker. Only this time, he was going to didn't get in his way." The courtroom fell deathly silent as I recounted the harrowing struggle on the dock, the sickening thud as Marcus's head struck the wooden planks. "I didn't mean to hurt him," I said quietly. "I just wanted to get away, to survive." As I stepped down from the witness stand, Marcus fixed me with a chilling glare, his jaw clenched with fury. In that moment, I knew he would never show remorse, never take responsibility for his actions. The jury's decision was swift and unanimous, guilty on all counts. As the judge read out his sentence, multiple life terms with no possibility of parole, Marcus finally lost his composure. "This isn't over," he spat, straining against the bailiffs restraining him. "You hear me, Irina? I'll get out, and when I do, you're as good as dead." His vile threats rang hollow as he was dragged away, his fate finally sealed. The man who had so meticulously crafted a life of deception was now the one ensnared, condemned to rot behind bars as punishment for his unforgivable crimes. In that moment, as the heavy oak doors slammed shut behind him, I felt a profound sense of release, and in resolve to ensure no one else would ever fall victim to a monster like Marcus Renault again. The guilty verdict provided closure, but the road to healing was long. In the months after Marcus's trial, I was inundated with book and movie offers, each promising to sensationalize my harrowing ordeal. But I declined them all, needing space to process everything that had happened. It wasn't easy. Nightmares plagued my sleep, Marcus's twisted snarl haunting my dreams. I'd wake in a cold sweat, my heart racing, convinced he'd somehow escaped and come for me. Therapy helped, as did the unwavering support of Lila and the few friends who stuck by me through the media firestorm. Little by little, I began to reclaim my life. Part of that process was rediscovering old passions Marcus had always mocked or dismissed, like my love of painting, vibrant landscapes that allowed me to lose myself in fields of color, far from the darkness I'd endured. One sunny afternoon, as I set up my easel in a verdant meadow, brush in hand, a profound peace washed over me. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly free, unshackled from Marcus's lies and malice. In that moment, I made a vow to myself. Never again would I be a victim. My voice, my story, my truth, they were mine to wield, to help others who had suffered at the hands of manipulators and abusers. The weeks turned to months, and I slowly but surely pieced myself back together. Until one crisp autumn day, an email pinged in my inbox, an invitation to showcase my work at a prestigious local gallery. As I stood amid the spotlit canvases on opening night, sipping a glass of wine and surveying the mingling crowd, a warm sense of pride bloomed in my chest. This night was a fresh start, a reclamation of the life Marcus had tried so violently to steal. Lila swept me into a fierce hug, eyes shining with fierce joy. "Look at you, lady. You've come so far." I smiled, giving her hand a squeeze. "I have, and I'm just getting started." A new chapter was unfolding, one authored by my sheer determination to transform my trauma into strength, my pain into power. The shadows of my past would never fully disappear, but they no longer held dominion over me. With my loved ones at my side and a future brimming with possibility ahead, I was finally truly free to soar.